You don't think so much about blocking and choreography in gaming, since the medium is dynamic, and everything has to change in a way that's optimized for strategy and playability. But that makes certain scenarios suffer from uncinematic, unstylish, disgusting realism. Chase scenes in movies are some of the funnest shenanigans to see play out, but in gaming they get overly chaotic almost immediately. This is because you have three archetypical focuses in a chase. Firstly, there's the runner, that's your character, MacGuffin, or objective, what's on the run. Next, you have your pursuer. This guy tries to catch the first one before they can get away. And finally, you have your most important actor, which is the obstacles and terrain your dudes are running through. This is significant because the winning character is the one that makes it through their obstacles with the most finesse. In a movie, each aspect gets its own establishing shot and its own time to shine. But in a game, you run into chaos when everything happens all at once, or jank when the camera can't cover the whole scene. You don't want the player to have to choose between appreciating a tense shot and focusing on the video game ahead of them, and you also don't want to confuse them by taking away the camera control. There's also the player's role in the chase, which can lead to complications. If the player is tasked with pursuing a target, then things are easy enough to choreograph, but it can get tedious if things feel too scripted or unexciting. If you aren't actually able to outmaneuver your opponent and catch them, then the video game quickly transforms from an athletic duel to an uneventful jog. For example, there's tailing missions where you need to follow someone without being noticed. Not only do these lose out on the rush of a good old-fashioned sprint off, but also force the player to hurry up and wait on some NPC's behavior. It's all the tension of a chase with none of the catharsis. After that, there are levels that are presented as a race that actually aren't. In Mirror's Edge's encounter with Jackknife, the player is tasked with catching up to another parkour expert, and it's incredibly stylish the first time. Once you get good at the game, however, you'll quickly learn that you aren't actually able to catch up to your foe, meaning that there's no reason to go fast in the first place. Jackknife styles on you the whole encounter, always one step ahead and taking time to gloat, but once you realize he's teleporting from place to place, it just feels like he's cheating. I much prefer something like Shadow Mario and Sunshine, where you're actually able to catch up to a baddie who shares your mobility tools. Since he's basically just you, you can copy him when you see him do something effective or useful. Not only do you get the satisfaction of outmaneuvering your equal, but you also get secretly tutorialized on some of the game's resources. A chase scene where the player is the one on the run is much more difficult to realize. When you're chasing Shadow Mario, you get to see how the baddie deals with obstacles and one-up them with your own approach. But if you're blazing the trail, then even looking back at your opponent is going to burn valuable getaway time. Because of this, it's common for games to take away control from a player during escape missions, so that they can focus on the video game while a friendly NPC takes the wheel. These segments really rock because you get to choreograph the player's position ahead of time while also allowing them to play. MGS3 has Snake zooming through an exploding military base, down a runway, into a boss fight, down a mountain, and finally into the jungle, whilst juggling a friendly AI and two non-allied primary antagonists. But it never fails to feel like a video game since the player is always doing something non-trivial. You're lining up tough shots on small targets. The only way to damage this mecha is to hit its drills with an RPG, and if you don't trank the grunts, you miss out on the best ranking. The Shagohod escape is very cinematic, and you get to play it, but it's still very scripted and not exactly light on cutscenes. It is possible to choreograph more emergent and natural chases, while still holding on to the hype too. First-person games can't exactly show you the monster on your tail, but your other senses still work fine. The invisible water monster from Amnesia has nothing to look back at, but it's so scary because you don't have to tell how close it is to you. You can already tell its proximity by the volume of its terrifying screams. Even in open-world games where the setting the chase takes place in can be drastically variable, choreography is possible with creative conditioning. Take for example Terraria's fight with a wall of flesh. Once the player has conquered the world and ventured to the bottom of the map, they have to go up against a monster that traps them in hell and slowly advances on them. If you try to go back up to the surface, you explode. If you rush in, it eviscerates you. And if you drop into the lava, you melt. Your only option is to run through the biome and fire backwards at it. Against all the previous fights in the game, you're able to build a little arena to kite the bullet sponge around, but here you're at the mercy of how the random world generation sculpted the underworld. You can prepare a bit of a bridge ahead of time, but it would be incredibly time-consuming to make your entire exit path danger-proof. That means juggling damage output while also navigating the game's deadliest default environment, often taking times to build or mine a route forwards, all on the clock. The dynamic choreography has you constantly improvising an exit strategy, all while still playing the video game. With creative enough approaches to the medium's limitations and necessities, video games can actually choreograph interesting chase scenes even in the most dynamically generated settings. An on-rails escape can be incredibly effective at getting the game's director back in the pilot seat, so long as the player doesn't notice a lack of control on their end. And when the player is chasing cars, it's best to let them actually catch it. There are a lot of important factors that need to be communicated to the player during a chase, but the game needs to present them in a way that doesn't distract from itself. Uncinematic, unstylish, disgusting realism comes out naturally when you have two characters pit against each other in a leg race, but with enough forethought, these moments can actually come across as both engaging, cinematic, and literally fantastic.